Several grains of oatmeal were harmed during the recording of this podcast.
From Rochester, the home of the Playhouse, Fantasy Raceways, and the Silver Ball Saloon, it's the FC3 Mighty Monkey Business podcast, starring Billy DeTore, Tanya Metris, Dan Carmen, and your host, Christopher Frank. Take it away, Christopher.
Good morning. That was good. That was like old school radio guy. Love it.
I told you he does the best openings.
Well, you know what? It's what we have to do now, James. Is you and I have to practice. We have to throw in a dash of used car salesman, right? And then just really go over the top with it. Just
depends on what used car salesman. Do we go local used car salesman, or do you want me to go whole ham?
You gotta go huge.
Yeah, you have to go huge.
We're going Fusillo, man. Gotta go.
No, not just Fusillo. I'm talking things like the unbeatable dealer. We'll see you right here.
You know, it'd be another good one.
I love it.
Who? I know I'm going to be dating myself, but Billy, I know you're going to latch onto this one. So you, Dan, ready? How about Crazy Eddie?
Oh, love Crazy Eddie.
Where prices are insane.
Or perhaps, if we're continuing to go old school, we could go with my boys, Vinny and Angelo, and
Arandaqueta Dodge. We'll patronize you like a family.
Or we'll go monster truck. Sunday.
We'll sell you the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge.
Oh, boy.
We could go the understated route with you can't stack cars.
There you go. Oh, man. You know, it was funny that here's your first anecdote of the podcast is when I went to go buy my very first car. I'd had several used cars, and then it was 96, 97, somewhere in that neck of the woods. I went to go buy my very first brand new car. I had a steady job. I was like being an adult. I was so excited, right? And so my dad went with me just to kind of help, be in the background and answer questions if I had any. But we ended up, one of the first places we went to was Arandaqueta Dodge because I wanted to take a look at the neon. I was definitely not looking for, a middle car. I was looking for an entry level. And the guy the salesman just never once wanted to talk to me. I was just some dumb kid. He kept looking past me, and my dad kept pointing to me. He goes, he's the one buying the car. I'm here to give him ideas if he has questions. But the guy kept just going right past me to my dad. And at one point I'm like, look, are you going to I go to my dad. I go, are you buying a car today? He goes, no. I said, okay, then we have no reason to be here anymore. And we walked out. So I was like, you got to be kidding me. But then that's where I started, I'm like, Arandaqueta Dodge will patronize you like a family, Anyway.
Now, there's one last car dealership I want to mention before we segue into just checking in on each other.
Go for it.
Have any of you ever heard of a place in Florida called Family Auto Mart?
No.
Okay. If you think the ads for Arandaqueta Dodge were campy, be prepared for at Family Auto Mart. We are wheeling and dealing. That's wheeling and dealing. Wow, the guy does a cartwheel.
What?
Oh my God!
This guy's ads became so popular, he gained his own local access show.
Oh my God.
Where he and his nephew portrayed Mexican stereotypes, hillbilly stereotypes, and just came up with every gag they could for the purpose of selling cars.
Oh my God!
Wow, I bet that would fly with today, huh?
Yeah, that would fly like a lead balloon.
But yeah, if you make an ass of yourself, I guess that it sells, huh?
Yeah, well, that's American way for you, right there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's true.
And
look at what everyone does just to get on American Idol, like the crazy shit they do, and it's like, seriously, like you do know that's what people are going to remember you for, right?
Right. Well, we have new voices in the studio, or at least on the online studio. Never mind. We're here today. Hi.
The virtual world, Chris. It's the virtual world.
It's the virtual world. I'm virtually not awake, but that's
the digital recording booth, as Krissi and I call it.
There you go. But we have our dear friends from our sister podcast, the Gamer Street Irregulars, or Gaming Street. It's gaming or gamer?
Gaming.
Okay, I never get that right, and I apologize for that.
Yeah.
But Krissi Harding and James Irish are on board with us today.
Hi, everyone.
This is our. We decided we're going to start doing crossover events because if the CW can do it, then so the hell can we. So we're going to be popping up on Gaming Street Irregulars, and so Gaming Street Irregulars is going to start popping up here, and we're all going to be one big happy having a grand old time family. So on board for today, the lovely and talented Miss Krissi Harding.
Hi.
How are you today, my dear?
I'm awake. That's about the extent of what I have
I
for
know.
right now.
Welcome to what is it? Are we in daylight savings or daylight standard time now? I can never remember.
This is daylight savings.
Savings?
Yeah.
And do we know why on God's green earth do we still subject ourselves to this nonsense?
It's the same reason of probably why we still subject ourselves to the old English system of measuring and not flipping over to metric like everybody else, is because Americans claim that they like tradition.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if any farmers still use daylight savings, because the purpose of initial daylight savings was to give them more time
Right.
to do, to kind of do their thing and feed
During the warm weather months.
Yep.
But now they have lights on their tractors, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have this great thing called lighting.
Electricity,
does anybody know if there's ever been
electricity.
if there's ever been an effort to try and do away with it?
Yes, every year someone tries to get rid of it, and every year people don't jump on board.
I think literally, like Marco Rubio is presenting a bill this year.
I
Yeah,
want to say I thought that they're like definitely that there was a rumor that this might be the last time for it.
That would be amazing. And it would be like one of the only things that Marco Rubio ever did right. So that would be kind of neat.
Yeah, now they're also up against the candy lobby, who doesn't want to make Halloween too bright.
Are we
Oh,
kidding me
boy.
right now? Like anybody actually goes out on Halloween anymore. Thank you, pandemic.
No, they just have sometimes really, really big parties where a lot of people got COVID from them because
Yeah, well,
they decided they were going to do that.
It's probably
trick-or-treat.
safer to go trick or treating than it was to have those parties. So
Yeah.
They're wearing the wrong kind of masks.
yeah.
Ay,
So
Madonna mia. But also along for the this cacophony of entertainment would be Krissi's cohort in crime on the Gaming Street Irregulars podcast, Grandmaster Mr. James Irish. James, my boy, great opening today. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chris.
How you doing there, big man?
I'm doing what I can. It's busy keeping up with not just this, but the upcoming project that, should everything go according to plan, will debut 2 days after you listen to this very podcast.
Nice, you're coming up this Friday.
Yes, the Pemmy and James kinda, sorta, hopefully funny cartoon podcast.
Nice. Oh, I'm so excited to hear that. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool.
is that the official title?
That's the official title.
Nice.
I love it.
oh my God, that's
I derived
great.
it from a Disney afternoon cartoon show, the Schnookums and Meat funny cartoon show, which I never watched, but dear God, that title sticks with you.
Snookums and meat. Oh my word.
Yeah.
I vaguely, it rings sort of a bell. I think I do remember hearing that it existed at one point. I don't remember exactly though. Bad me.
But as for me today, well, I'm going to be channeling my inner Costanza on a Festivus day.
Are you particularly grumpy?
And you're going to hear them.
Now, are you particularly grumpy about our main topic for today? I'm assuming then is.
I'm not particularly grumpy. I'm equal parts impressed and frustrated.
Okay.
Because this our topic today, the Netflix documentary series High Score, gets so many things right, but well, we'll get into that after the break.
Yeah. We'll jump into that one after the first break today. So let me just keep wandering around the room a little bit. I keep saying around the room, even though we're like separated from each other, but I miss you guys, and I'm going to stick to the old ways of doing things.
There you go.
I'm going to land on my dear brother Daniel. Daniel-san.
Hello.
How are you feeling today?
I am feeling well today, thank you.
I am glad to hear that very, very much, Lee. How's treatments are progressing? Everything's going all right?
I'm on a break right now between treatments, so I get a next one on Thursday. So that's when I'm going to be down in my not so good anymore for a while. But
yeah.
But hopefully it's a lower dose this time, so hopefully it won't be as bad. But we'll see.
So do I need to make chocolate chip cookies for you?
They're never a bad thing. I wouldn't say no.
Okay.
This kind of falls under why did you have to ask? The answer will always
It's true.
Yes.
Very,
When
very
it comes
true.
to chocolate chip cookies, it's always yes, please.
Yeah, but basically I had almost 2 weeks where I couldn't have anything cold. So anything drink wise or food wise, I couldn't handle anything cold. So warm soda kind of thing, or warm hot water or hot chocolate or whatever. At least room temperature I could sort of get by, but cold it was. So I'm
that is an interesting.
I'm loving having cold drinks right now, and I had some ice cream last night, and but come Thursday, it's gonna be back again, at least to some extent. So that's
a really
well, you have your heated blanket to snuggle up in.
That's already. So
have the cats found it?
No, they don't. They don't like me that much. The cats, for some reason. They tolerate me for treats, but besides that, they're not really.
You're the guy who feeds us, but we don't need to know you're there.
Right. I mean, everybody else around here, they love it, but but me, they just tolerate me sometimes. So I don't know what's going on.
You're their servant.
Yeah.
That's all you are. You're the servant.
You're the help.
Well, my last cat, she was my baby, and she would come to me all the time, and she'd be, and she was there. But
which
these
one
cats,
was that one?
Loki. Yeah, she was. But these cats are kind of they tolerate me.
Juno is currently crashed out on my foot.
Nice. Your foot's warm.
Chilling out. It's my left foot is very toasty at the moment. My right foot's is jealous. My right foot's telling me I need to get another dog because it's jealous, and the rest of me is like, no, you're not getting another dog. And my right foot's very upset by that. But there's this whole conversation going on in my head because, as I mentioned on Dan and Chris Save the World, there are two voices in my head at every moment.
Just two?
There's just two. No, there's the one that controls the mouth and goes wandering off and says whatever the hell it wants to, and then there's the other one that's basically going, "What are you doing? Why are you? Stop that? Why are you saying that? Oh, come on, really?"
They don't converse that much. They don't agree on things.
The time you really have to worry is when the two of them are on the same page.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, Lady Tanya, Lady Rala, how are you over there, young lady?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm finishing my birthday celebration week.
Okay.
It'll be going into maybe the birthday month. I'm not sure. But
I must ask, how's it feel to finally be 30?
It feels awesome and amazing to be 30. Plus
so
some shipping and handling.
Some shipping and handling in Texas and things like that.
I like that one. Shipping and handling.
And I am going to sit at that 30 plus shipping and handling for the next 50 some odd years.
Okay, that sounds good.
No.
My aunt always used to say when she turned 60, she's like, I'm not 60. It's just the 30th anniversary of my 30th birthday.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
I like the shipping and handling. I haven't heard that
like
one before.
That one too.
Oh wow, we've used that for quite a while. And usually says $29.95 plus shipping and handling. So.
You are as old as you feel.
I know, and I really don't feel like I'm 49, but
see, no, what you got to do.
Times that I do, but
then there's the old Groucho Marx line: "A man is only as old as the woman he feels."
Of course, Groucho Marx also famously said, I wouldn't want to be a part of a club that would have the likes of me as a member."
There you go. I once shot a man in my pajamas. Or no, I once shot an elephant in my pajamas. That's the one. I ruined that. That's bad. Anyway, moving on. Billy!
Hey, Chris.
Happy birthday to Pi.
Oh, yes. As we record this, it's Pi Day 314. I have a cat named Pi, the three-legged cat. And when we adopted him, the vet put 314 as his birthday.
Nice.
3.14 for you Pi math nerds out there.
Nice.
Actually, as long as we're doing the around the room, can I throw out a current situation that I'm having and get your guys' opinion on it?
Sure.
It has nothing to do with nerdiness, but I'm looking for opinions on this.
I'm good.
Okay. And
first need a chainsaw. Oh, wait, you got to tell us first.
I just might, actually. Because it was in the news yesterday. There's a gentleman in the news who's getting at least 15 years in jail.
Okay.
Do you know the story of the guy with the music school?
No.
Out in Parma, the Parma Music School, who was secretly taping little kids.
Oh
yes.
Yeah, I heard.
Yes.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, and turns out he had much more than that. Well, he was my next door neighbor until about a year and a half ago.
Oh boy.
God, yeah, it was towards about the summer of 2019, where a Sunday afternoon, our street was lined with cop cars, and we didn't know why. And then we saw cops going in and out of the house next door, and in and out, and in and out, and we didn't know what was going on. That night, I get a knock on the door, and it's an older gentleman asking if we had seen his son. He hasn't seen his son or heard from his son in like a week, and he lives next door. No, I don't. There was police going in and out of the house, but no, I haven't seen your son. Found out a few days later through some news connections I had that the guy had been arrested for that dark, awful thing and he had been in jail, and that's why the father hadn't heard from him. Well, the house sat empty. And then this past summer, it was bought by flippers. Okay. So it turns out, and this is like stuff I'm hearing through neighbors, is that it's a relative of the guy that bought it. And I looked online, and it sold for $68,000, which is way, way, way under what any house in this neighborhood is going for. So they dumped it for cheap, and they're flipping it. We've been watching stuff go in and out. But once or twice a week now, they play music insanely loud until 3 or 4 in the morning.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
And like, literally, I bet there's 10 feet at most separating our houses.
Right.
Like my bedroom wall to where they are is maybe 10 feet. And I'm ready to kill somebody. Do I call the police and start a neighbor war? Do I go over I'm afraid to go over and confront a stranger, to be honest with you nowadays. What would you guys do in this situation?
I would first just say, hey, look, knock on the door and just say, hey, look, guys, I get it. You're having a good time. I don't want to tell you what to do in your own house, but really what you're doing is affecting me. It doesn't need to be that loud, that late. End of statement. And be like, just be cool about it. And then it's on them. And if they choose to, you know what? Don't even bother. You're right. Don't even fucking bother. Just start calling the police at that point. It's noise complaint. Let them deal with it. That's what they're there for. It's quality of life issue in the neighborhood. And then that way,
Well, my question is, because I've been in this situation with a slight neighbor war. My question is, do you want to start a neighbor war, or
I don't. I'm not a neighbor war type. Can I ask another question real quick, because I'm concerned? I'm not seeing my volume levels going up and down when I talk anymore.
I can.
You guys? Okay.
Oh, I
We
can.
see them.
Yeah, we can hear you
I was
fine.
worried I wasn't recording, and then just another technical problem that we were discussing off the air. So
Really? Us?
Yeah. So I was worried I wasn't recording. I'm sorry.
No, I'm seeing live bar. You're
okay.
in good shape.
Good.
So, because the reason why I asked that is because, like I said, we've kind of had one of those neighbor wars. A lot of times, it depends on how anonymously you want to be, and it depends on what the noise ordinance is in your area. Because if there's a noise ordinance, the police might not actually be the one to really call. It may be the town itself and the zoning area.
I live in the city of Rochester, so.
Okay.
Is there a code enforcement officer that you can check with?
Yeah,
that's not a code enforcement issue. I'm sorry to tell you. So no, code
there's our
enforcement
expert
would not
right
be
there.
involved in that one.
Okay, so then
I
you
had to
probably
throw it out there.
Yeah,
I know.
So, so probably, with the city, it depends on how anonymous you want to be. If you want to be totally anonymous, do the police. If you want to try to be the good neighbor first, but then they'll know who it is if the police do eventually get called, if they don't knock that shit off.
That's what I've been worried about.
You know what? Probably with Chris, especially with the city, because you don't know. Like my neighbors all around me in Arundequoit, I kind of know them all, like whether I want to know them or not. I would say that I would probably agree with Chris on this one. Hello, cops.
Okay, I may do that. And the funny thing is that no one lives over there. Like literally, the house is empty most of the time, unless like during the day if they're doing stuff. But they don't live there. But once or twice a week, they spend the night partying over there.
That's nice.
including last Saturday night, they had an actual party, like where the street was lined with cars for a while, but they were done relatively early, like 1 or 2-ish. So.
Oh, yeah, relatively early,
Yeah. It's gone to 3 or 4 on like a random Wednesday or Thursday night where there's like a group of, I'm going to guess 4 or 5 of them that are very loud until 4 or 5, and they're like 3 or 4 in the morning. So.
Why people
like I just wanted opinions because
if it were me, I would find a way to hack into their audio system and blare the I love you.
That's why we get along so well, James. You're evil, like me.
Twisticated, I like it. Oh, so let's round this back around and get ready to move on for the morning here. We had mentioned Pi Day. We mentioned it's Billy's cat's birthday. However, it is also the birthday of a very important person to the FC3 family, our box office goddess, Lady Sybil. Sybil Liberties.
Happy birthday, Sybil.
It's another birthday for our pink-haired woman, and it's amazing, and I wish her well and all sorts of love to my little sister. She's a sweetheart. So, who, if I'm understanding our last chat correctly, may have gotten a promotion at work. I have to confirm that, but it sounds like some positive things were happening for her, so I was very excited to hear that.
Our head of security got a promotion at work too.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah, he did. That's right, Mr. Sean, doing a little bit more for the folks that he works for. That's great stuff. Good. See, there's lots of good news out there. People are listening to podcasts. We're getting vaccinated. People are having birthdays. People are getting promotions. See, there's things to celebrate out there, gang. So let's look at the positives. And
I'm playing Star Wars today.
We're playing Star Wars, a role-playing game today. I'm excited. I'm playing a Bothan pilot. Yay. So I'm excited. It'll be fun.
Accentuate the positive.
There you go.
Look at the negative.
So on that happy and pious note, I am... What's that, James?
If Tanya sent you to find Death Star plans, run and hide.
Oh, we actually scraped the ship on the first way out. And so
this is great. Let me tell this anecdote real quick. We're setting it up, and luckily for the first time in a while, we're playing a Star Wars game where nobody's playing a Jedi at the moment. So it's kind of neat. And this is taking place around the time of The Mandalorian. So it's after Death Star 2, after Return of the Jedi, stuff like that. And so we've got a bunch of soldiers. We got a couple scouts. Okay, cool. So we got ourselves our light freighter, and we're just going to go out and adventure around and get work and see what we can do. Basically do kind of like Firefly, just shiny, let's be bad guys, but also just looking for work so that we can get by. And I'm like, okay, I'm playing the pilot. I called pilot, got it, cool. I put all my points into pilot, and I'm excited about it. My very first piloting role is undocking the ship, and I rolled a 1.
Oh no!
And I'm grinding the ship on. It's like think Galaxy Quest, where when they're launching the ship, he's just grinding it right along the side of the space dock on the way out. Yeah, my character could wind up being one of the greatest pilots in the galaxy he's ever seen, but everybody in his party is going to remind him of the time that he ground the paint job on space dock on the way out. So I think it's great for role playing. You can't like write backstory like that. That is just awesome because you'll be like pulling these maneuvers with these light freighters and just going completely gonzo, and people are still going to remind him, how about that time you ground the paint job on Space Dock's wall? Okay.
Yeah, and our friend Scott is never going to let him live it down because he's like, yeah, and I had to keep buffing out the scratches on it.
Yeah, Scott's playing the chief engineer and our Q branch, our tech wizard. I'm playing the pilot. I'm playing a Bothan, which is kind of an animal, he's got fur and ears and whatnot. So I'm playing him like a cat person. And so I'm playing, my character's name is Hobrin Phaelus, but you call him Hobbs. And so Scott is playing Kelvin.
Of course.
Oh, Kelvin and Hobbs.
So Kelvin and Hobbs are the people who run the ship so that the crew can go do the missions. So... And that's we're having a good old time already. I mean, when Scott and I get going at the table, the banter between the two of us is always entertaining. So
that's a bonus episode we're going to have to do, Krissi. Critical failures.
Yes, I am writing that down.
Critical failures. Oh my God, I've been role-playing games for 30 plus years. I have several stories.
We'll just have to make sure we can do it when you're not running the game for the kids.
Right.
Yeah. You guys are usually recording while I'm DMing. All right. So, with that being said, my dear friends, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, our topic of the day is a series on Netflix. How many episodes? 6 episodes?
Six episodes.
It is called High Score, where we dive into the gaming world and start talking a little bit more in depth about a variety of things, including stuff that James is going to be kvetching about shortly. So, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, it's High Score time. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dudes and dudettes, and all points in between. We love you. We miss you. We can't wait to see you guys again soon. All right. So on Netflix, we love our documentaries, except for Tanya, who does not like documentaries, but that's okay. We still love her anyway. High Score is a Netflix docuseries created by France Castrel. I hope I did not massacre that name. It features stories and interviews with the developers and creators of early video games. The series first premiered August 19th of 2020. It's 6 episodes long, and each episode's what, about an hour, hour and a half, give or take?
About an hour.
About 45 minutes.
45 minutes to an hour?
Yeah.
So time flies when you're having fun. The very first episode, Boom and Bust, covered the early growth of arcade games and home video game consoles in the late 70s and early 80s until the 1983 video game crash. Featured interviews included Tomiro Nishikato, creator of Space Invaders, Rebecca Heineman, winner of the first Space Invaders U.S. National Championship, Doug McRae, Steve Golson, Mike Horowitz of General Computer Corporation that made the accelerator boards for arcade games, and several others. It goes on to talk about the Comeback Kid, role-playing games, war games, fighting games, and the whole idea of leveling up. 6 episodes all came out at the same time. They're out there, and trust me, they're out there like we are out there at the same time. So let's talk a little bit about High Score. Billy, how many of those episodes did you guys watch?
I watched 3 of them, and I actually meant to watch all 6, but I never got to the other 3 yesterday. I meant to, but I really enjoyed it. I'm going to watch the other 3 anyway, even though we'll be done talking about it by then, because, well, the first 3 episodes were sort of my era of video game playing. So I loved finding out the history of the games I played, the Nintendo system. I had the original Atari 2600. I had the NES system. I had the first Sega Genesis system. But even before that, in the first episode where they had like the all text games for computers, when I was
working Infocom and things like that.
Yeah, it was late 70s, early 80s. I had a computer class where part of it was playing one of those games. There was a Star Trek game where it was, do you choose this or this? And you answered, you just got hit by a Klingon photon torpedo. You're now dead. And to me, that was just the funnest game, that Star Trek game.
Yeah,
okay, I'm
I remember that.
Go Lightspeed 6 over to this quadrant and look around. But it was all text. And then the 3 episodes I saw covered the stuff I grew up playing. So I really enjoyed them. And I liked the way they told the story. I liked the woman who used to be a young boy, the one that won the Space Invaders Championship and wound up developing games.
Okay.
And I found the stories of the people fascinating, and I liked reliving the games that I grew up playing. So
that's cool.
That's my review of the first 3 episodes.
All right. That's very cool.
I like the fact that they shined a spotlight on someone whose contribution to console gaming was completely has been overshadowed for a while, and that was Jerry Lawson, who they went and interviewed his kids because unfortunately, Mr. Lawson, had passed away a while ago at the age of 70. But I was really kind of cool to go and see, like, because you can talk to the developers, but I like the fact that they talked with his family, so you got to see who he was outside of the accomplishment that he gave us.
Okay.
And it was kind of cool listening to his kids talk about him and everything. I watched all the episodes a while ago because it was such a good documentary for me, and it's a good introductory documentary because there are some things that they skipped over, didn't go into. Of course, with only 6 episodes, you have to kind of pick and choose, and I'd love to know what was left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, there's that.
Not just a matter of 6 episodes, but no promise of Netflix from a second season of a second season.
Yeah.
This is the same group that did The Toys That Made Us, and they were given 2 seasons for that show right off the bat. They say so in the introduction. It's an 8-part documentary series about the toys that we all know, and so on. But I don't think they had that same luxury, and that's why I find this series both brilliant and frustrating. Because
I was going to say, where Billy was very, very pleased with the series. James, and I'm not going to say you're completely the opposite end of the spectrum, because I know that you did say you had some positives and some things you really did enjoy, but you also came in, you were ready, you were loaded for bear.
I have a theory that the more you know about a subject, the more likely you're to nitpick it. Like, I'm a sports fan, but my favorite sport is baseball. A baseball documentary I'll enjoy, but I'll also sort of nitpick. Whereas I'm not a basketball fan, but man, did I love that Michael Jordan documentary almost more than anything I've watched lately, because I don't have as much of a history with basketball. So I'm just I'm allowing myself to let them describe the story to me without me having as much information about it.
Now, I need to caveat my criticism by saying I have no beef with the producers themselves. I have no issue necessarily with any of the stories they picked. It's just the format that they wound up with, and again, the lack of a promise of more episodes from Netflix gave them impossible choices.
Really?
For starters,
okay,
on episode 1, they give us details on Space Invaders, Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man, and the failure of the E.T. game, and of course the story about Jerry Lawson. All of these things are absolutely crucial and important, and all these things deserve to be in that episode. But 48 minutes to cover the span from 1977 to 1983, 7 of the most crucially formative years of an industry, it's not enough. It reduces Midway, one of the largest distributors of pinball, electromechanical, and video games, to a bit player mentioned only as the American publisher of Pac-Man. It gives Williams, one of the most innovative arcade developers of that period, the company that came up with Defender, Joust, Sinistar, Robotron 2084. They're just cabinets in the background. So I'm just and I'm just thinking to myself, this is the sacrifice they had to make just so they could get the stories they decided editorially were the most crucial, the most personal, and the ones that would appeal to the broadest audience. And it's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at episode 2, which is the Nintendo-focused episode. Come back in. Nintendo basically brought the home video game market back from the brink, and they talk a lot about Donkey Kong and Super Mario Brothers. But Legend of Zelda is basically mentioned in passing, and the most it's discussed is in the context of Nintendo's game counselors.
Okay.
Come on, Zelda is like the Alpha Mega to Super Mario Brothers Alpha. But those two go hand in hand when it comes to creating the phenomena that the NES brought in the mid to late 80s.
So it's not so much the story they told, it's the story they didn't tell.
Yeah.
Okay.
like I said, there's probably a lot of stuff left on the cutting room floor with this because, like James says, he's right. Legend of Zelda really kind of redefined really role-playing games before they were text-based. This is the first one where you actually were like you actually could move the character how you wanted to move him versus how the text wanted you to move him. And it was also the first game, we talk about in our Legend of Zelda episode, where this was the game where the creators actually wanted players to talk to each other and share secrets and talk about their experience versus, when you play Mario Brothers as a platformer and you may get like a hint or two of where a power-up is, but like Zelda was purposely designed to be something that you play, you go to school, you talk about it with your friends, see who found what, go back and you try it.
At least the first such game on consoles.
Yes. This was what this was. I mean, it was bringing in, what now becomes, like the gaming community and the walkthroughs you find. Before, your walkthrough was your friends, and they really, Nintendo's influence is so huge, 45 minutes will not cover it. It literally single-handedly brought back the gaming industry to what we know it is today, which is why I get so upset when people when you read like the gaming magazines and they dismiss Nintendo, and it's like, dude, you have a job because of Nintendo. Like Nintendo saved a lot of this stuff from just crashing and burning and just being considered junk. And
is that the video game crash of '83 that they're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that first episode does get right, because a lot of people pin the blame solely on E.T. But High Score does make a point that it wasn't just that. It was the failure of the Pac-Man conversion for the Atari 2600, which was
horrible,
clunky. I had it. It was one of my least favorite games. I had it for the Atari 2600, and it was
bad.
Fun to play.
It was bad.
And yet Atari published more copies of Pac-Man than they had sold Atari 2600s.
Yeah.
And also on top of that, the glut of the market, they also touch on a bit with the sheer number of platforms of games. There's a very specific ad for the home versions of Q*bert that I always refer people to. It shows like 9 to 12 screens of every possible version of that game you can buy for every home computer and console available at that time. There were too many options, not enough differentiation between what was quality and and the market was being filled with a lot of garbage.
I'm sure.
Although I will have to say with episode 2, this was kind of for me because I am a Kirby fan, is I love that they talked about how Kirby came to be, because not a lot of people know the story. And Kirby was based off of a lawyer who helped Nintendo out by the name of John Kirby. And in fact, the second episode was dedicated to Mr. Kirby, who did pass away in 2019. But they did create the character of Kirby, and they named it Kirby, and the name stuck, and they dedicated it to John Kirby, who everyone said was absolutely delighted with the character.
That second episode also opens with one of Nintendo's most unsung heroes, who deserves so much more credit than he deserves. Hirokazu Tanaka, who developed the sound for Donkey Kong, Metroid, Kid Icarus, Balloon Fight. So much iconic music that, just in Metroid alone, you've got songs that are pulse-pounding adventure. You've got atmospheric haunted loneliness. You have when you're approaching the final boss, you have music that turns up the sense of dread. This was groundbreaking stuff. But you say the name Hirokazu Tanaka, or even his nickname Pip Tanaka, to someone who might have played Metroid 30 years ago, and they'd go, "Who?"
Yeah, I didn't know.
And he was actually with the music, Billy, you'd probably enjoy this, is that he was not into doing the synthesizer music. All the music that was eventually transposed into the game, he actually preferred using live orchestras and live instruments making that music.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's why this music so very easily can translate into being used with live instruments versus some of the other games where um, where they would just start with the synthesizer or start with it being digitalized and then trying to transcribe it later where it just doesn't work as well. I mean, so he truly is an unsung hero where he started that, and we now see it in more different games like Final Fantasies. Music is done that same way. Really, almost every Legend of Zelda game has been done that way, along with Castlevania and Metroid and some of the more sweeping epic games where they start with the live orchestra and then digitalize it versus digitalizing it and then trying to adapt it to live instruments. And he deserves a whole lot more credit than he ever got for that.
Well, why do you think it's got skipped over? I mean, if you had a 45-minute format and only 6 episodes to play and you have several topics to cover, do you think that kind of led into kind of some of these issues being truncated or passed over?
I have a feeling it did. I mean, any documentary always runs into what stories help the story you want to tell. And that's always hard. The fact that they gave him some time was awesome because everyone forgets his contribution. When they talk about video game music, they name him once and then they don't talk about it. Where this guy did so much. Like, he technically could be considered the John Williams of the video game world. Like, he created so many themes that we know and love, and you recognize them. He made those. Like, he created those.
Dan, I can recommend a couple songs we can use for the breaks of his.
Yeah. He and I have a feeling a lot of what was cut and left on the cutting room floor is when you're making a documentary, you have a story you want to tell. You have to pick what tells your story. It's, this series could easily go for another 20 to 30 episodes of just everything that happened in the video game industry from the 80s to now.
You could do a single episode on just Tetris.
Exactly. And have it be fascinating, not be boring, because that's such an amazing, that game there has such an interesting history too. Especially Tetris Attack, which absolutely looks nothing like Tetris and features Yoshi.
That was actually a Panel de Pon game in Japan. But now Krissi and I are really showing our nerdy side.
Actually, just speaking of Tetris, they focused on the kid that won that the gaming championship and how he spent so much time playing Tetris to where he saw the shapes like in his dreams at night. Same thing happened to me. I wound up playing so much Tetris that even when I closed my eyes, I just start seeing the shapes, trying to figure out how they fit together. You get addicted to that game.
You
and
do.
I love Tetris.
There's a phrase for that, the Tetris effect.
Yes.
My family's like, hey, can you Tetris the refrigerator so everything can fit?
Oh, that's cool.
And I can do it to the dishwasher too. So I will go back and rearrange the dishwasher so everything fits in, and it's all because of seeing the stuff on Tetris. And my last name is Metris, so I get that joke at work from the kids.
Yeah. I mean, like we used to say here, when people were like, can you get this to fit? I'm like, of course I can. I was good at Tetris. I used to have a Tetris war with my dad where we would go back and forth trying to beat each other's high scores. I didn't get to the point of seeing it in my sleep. That was Legend of Zelda, where I would hear the music. I'd be sitting there and I'm like, I'm hearing the theme from Legend of Zelda. Am I going on a quest now? Like, as a kid. But yeah, like Tetris, there's so many games that have made us. There we go. Netflix documentary, the games that made us. Go.
There you go.
You can pay me rights for the naming later. And then they go into the dreaded console wars. So I will start this.
Okay. Yeah, that's the episode that was dubbed War Games or like that. That was it. Delved into Sega versus Nintendo, not necessarily a Command and Conquer style game.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, and this is rumbling this. Who were you, Nintendo or were you Sega? Because back in the 90s, you had to be one or the other. You could not be both.
But we had both.
but you still always preferred one over the other. Like, I was always a Nintendo girl. My best friend was a Sega girl. James, what were you, Nintendo or Sega?
I was a Nintendo guy, but considering I cut my teeth on the ColecoVision, where Nintendo and Sega games coexisted in the same environment before either of them were publishing consoles in the United States, I always saw the war as kind of silly.
I do too, but that's how this also proved at the time how strong marketing was, because it was marketed that way. I used to, Nintendo had Nintendo Power. I used to look at my friends who were like, I like Sega. I'm like, but Sega doesn't have a magazine.
Until Sega Vision
judge them.
But when we got our Sega, there was a game that we bought at like GameStop or something. It was $14.99. It was a game out of Japan called War Song.
Yes.
And I tell you, we have gotten our $14.99 worth out of that game at least tenfold, because it's a turn-based role-playing game. And I can't remember what the prince's name is, but then he levels up to a king, and I know Minna is the cleric that levels up from like cleric up to high priestess and things like that. And there's other soldiers that you can hire and things like that. And if the king character dies, your game's done, so you have to restart. But you could have like 4 games saved on it and things like that. And it was like there was a hint of like a War Song 2 that was coming out. We bought this probably 1994, 1995. And we still have the game. We still have the Sega. And every so often we'll kick in the Sega just to go back and reminisce and play that game.
Yeah. I have to try this now.
It actually came out in 1991 in the U.S. And its actual name, it's called War Song here, but it's known as the Lane Grasser series in Japan. Eventually was the inspiration for Fire Emblem.
Yes, and I love Fire Emblem.
Yeah, so there was actually, this was a game in a pretty long series. There was like, I think up to 3 or 4 games. Then the first one came over as War Song. They were going to bring over number 2, but they felt the sales weren't good enough for it, because they were comparing it to like Sonic the Hedgehog and John Madden. So they were like, which stinks, because the Sega system actually is very well made for role-playing games. But they never ever invested really into that market. The 2 really good ones are War Song and Beyond Oasis. Those are the 2 really good role-playing games on the Sega system, where Nintendo like went all in for role-playing games. And that's
Nintendo was desperate to make RPGs a thing. They published the first Dragon Quest game in the United States. They published the first Final Fantasy game in the United States. They kept saying, hey, look at this. These are great. These are awesome. These are spectacular. And though there were plenty of people who played them, they did not catch wildfire the same way that the Marios and the Zeldas and the Metroids and the Punch-Outs were. So,
and Castlevania. Super Castlevania is an amazingly good game.
Right. But the ironic thing is, and something that the role-playing game episode didn't touch on, is what got the Japanese RPG really going was a bunch of little critters.
They did
here
not
in the States anyway.
Yeah, they
it took Pokemon.
Pokemon's Final Fantasy kind of started it. Pokemon cemented it. Because I remember people always would talk about Final Fantasy at school, but Pokemon was like the one that like pounded it into place. And the reason why they really pushed for it was because in Japan, role-playing games are huge. Like, the majority of the game, they don't do the first-person shooters like in North America. PALS is most definitely into their football games and their platformers. Like if you look at any of their actual libraries, you can tell what is big in certain countries. And I know Nintendo was trying to make the JRPGs big here, because it would have been nothing to import those games over. They already have the games. It's just translating them. And even back then, I mean, and even translations of those games really did not get refined.
Sorry, that was me.
That's
No worries.
okay. Didn't really get refined until the fan community started getting involved and was like, okay, we need better translations for these games. And I have a friend who actually, that's how he got hired in Japan. He paid for college by actually doing fans translations for games and animes. He spoke perfect English, he spoke perfect Japanese and all the dialects, and they literally had him do that while he was going to school, and that's how he paid for college, and now he does it all the time in Japan.
Now, you want to know the craziest thing about Japanese RPG games?
Sure.
What's that?
They were inspired by a Dutch individual named Henk porting over an American computer game, the Wizardry series, to Japanese computers. So it wasn't even.
When was Wizardry out? Because I remember Wizardry and like Ultima and a couple of those others. They were all kind of like contemporaries of each other, if I remember correctly.
Give me a second. I could pull it up because I do have that saved down here somewhere.
Because using that is going to lead me into the episode 3 role players that Tanya and I watched the other night.
Yeah, and the sad part is role players didn't even touch on Wizardry.
No, well, I think it was because of availability. You know, here's the thing:
They didn't have enough time.
Yeah, I don't think they had enough time. You know, it's you guys have taken a 45-minute 45-minute documentary and talked about another 3 hours worth of material very easily. And that's the wonderful thing about these particular episodes. At least this is what I'm seeing, is that these are a great taste for you to inspire people to go ahead and look further.
Yeah.
Do you want to know more? Sorry, Starship Troopers reference. So and then you hit. Oh no. I'm sorry. It was 70 degrees the other day. I'm looking out my window and I'm seeing snow. That's bothering me at the moment. I'm
sorry. My mom was yelling that up the stairs, and I'm like, I'm podcasting. What?
Yeah, my computer, by the way, is steadily starting to collapse little by little. There are certain applications that are not working right now. Yeah. So the fact that I'm still in the podcast is nice.
Yeah, so Wizardry, actually, the original Wizardry, this is like the only time you'll ever see a flip like this, came out in North America in September of 1981. It was ported to Japan in November of 1985. Okay. And went to the PALS region in 1983. So you almost very rarely see it start here, go to PALS before it goes to Japan. I feel bad for PALS because they always get things last. Although I don't totally feel bad for them because they also have some awesome games there that never made it to North America.
For those who don't know the terminology, PALS refers to the European region.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, guys.
Well, it's sort of like DVD players that Region 2s or whatever. PALS, yeah.
Yeah, we call it PALS. And I... Like I said, I always feel bad for PALS because usually they never get anything like first or second. They always get it last. The only one that they ever actually got second in North America has never gotten is Terranigma, which I'm still pissed about. But I play it because I can read Italian. But yeah, like like I said, a lot of this stuff here had to be cut, because it's not the story they want to tell. And one of the things, like people who like me and James, who are very heavily into video games, like we're sitting there like, but what about this? And it's like, we forget that somebody like my mom who's watching it wouldn't have any idea what that game is.
Actually, I was going to ask you.
We don't necessarily forget that because, like Krissi and I have been saying this whole time, it's the impossible choice. What do you cut?
It's Sophie's choice.
At the same time, we know it's like Billy said, the more we know, the more we're going to nitpick.
Well, I was going to ask one thing I really enjoyed, but I have a feeling that maybe you didn't as much, was sometimes just the personal stories, the story of the kid that won the championship, or in the role-playing game episode, the gay guy that created the Gay Blade video.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's
which I loved that story and sort of the outcome and following that along. But I have a feeling that maybe in your world, that is a little story that they made way bigger for the sake of the entertainment of it for the TV show.
I think it was actually very crucial and very important that they included that story and gave voice to people who would otherwise be marginalized in what is quite frankly perceived as a monolithically cisgender white male fandom.
Yeah. Ryan Best has broken so many doors down with Gay Blade and it is actually I played a demo of it. I really want to play the full game. It just my plate is full with games I want to play, and it's an amazingly good game. And the fact that he did it and he did what he did with it, and they told the story of it, which I'm like, thank you, Lord, that somebody put this story in, because while we do talk about the big industries, indie games like what he did are going to not only give us new stories to tell in this industry, break down doors in this industry that usually are slammed shut because not game developers, but game CEOs and game owner, like the people who own these companies, are always stuck with the idea that their clientele is going to be the teenage white straight male boy, not realizing that there are so many other people who play these video games to escape or to see these stories. And that's where indie games are amazing, is because they're telling those stories that normally would not make it past the green light section, or get the green light from a big studio.
Right.
And the heartbreaking part of that is it wasn't always that way, too.
Oh,
you
no.
Look at the advertising campaign for Centipede, and the main ad flyer showed a woman playing that game with her daughter.
Yeah.
Well, this fits into topics that we've touched on several occasions over the course of the history of this podcast, where we talk about toxicity and gatekeeping and things like that. And our stance against it has always been very firm and unquestionable at this point. And if anybody ever wants to wonder if we were, what our take is on gatekeeping, please feel free to ask, and we'll go off for about an hour telling you how terrible it is.
Mm-hmm.
So that all kind of fits into, and that's a symbol of culture too. Our culture in this country and around the world. There's ebb and flow. There's ebb and flow. And right now it's ebbing, unfortunately. But we'll work on that.
With Rebecca and the first story of Rebecca's journey becoming the champion of, I think he played. It was not. I don't know if it was Tetris or Missile Control.
Space Invaders.
Space
Invaders, yeah.
Yes. And Rebecca's story of the fact that, and I love how they said it in a way where it was just very matter of fact. They told her story, granted, and I love the fact that they acknowledged that, okay, so this is a woman in front of you, and it was once a young boy who played this game. Who cares? She still won it, and she still was the champion, and that's awesome. And I love that how they framed a lot of the stories, like with Jerry Lawson's story, which gets overlooked. The stories that they picked to tell were perfect for this documentary. It was perfect. I could, as a producer, when you want to tell a story that touches people across the board, we all know somebody like Rebecca. We all know somebody like Ryan. We all know someone like Jerry.
Yeah,
they're people who they weren't just names. They were people who we know in our life. So people like Jeff, who ended up becoming a Nintendo game counselor. How many of us have called into the Nintendo game counselor line looking for help?
I did.
I unfortunately was told no because it cost money. Believe me. The one time I did was just because I was trying to figure out what was wrong with the game system, and the guy was like, okay, here's the ABC Electronics, take it to them. I'm like, okay, Dick, we need to take it to ABC Electronics. He's like, no. He's like, it works just fine. You have to blow into the cartridge.
I was just going to say that.
Now here's the good news.
Which was the worst thing you could do. But
really?
Yeah, it's the worst thing. You're adding moisture to it, and it will actually start to degrade the game.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I learned that when I got older, though. Like, when you're young, you're like, hey, it works.
I just learned it today.
That's funny.
Now, here's the good news. Episodes 4 and 5, the one in the Genesis versus Nintendo War and the one in the fighting games, they actually nail the story selection almost perfectly.
Yes.
That episode, the Genesis episode, focuses in on Sonic the Hedgehog, John Madden football, and those were the two biggest movers for Sega in their battle against Nintendo for just trying to get their part of the market share. And they tell a lot of crucial stories about the background behind those games, how John Madden got involved, how a young gay black man came into EA and instituted a change in the 95 edition of Madden to make the default players African American instead of white.
Yep. He was the first, Gordon Bellamy.
Yep. And they talk about the surveying of how Sonic was developed, looking at roller coasters and surveying American kids about what design they liked best, and the hurdles in getting that kind of character even off the ground in order to come up with a mascot to challenge Mario, because, well, they don't mention that their previous attempt at a mascot, Alex Kidd, just wasn't doing it, but you don't need Alex Kidd for that story.
No. Although I will say, hang on one second. I'll be right back.
Okay.
And while we're waiting, I'll just quickly touch on episode 5, the fighting games. The most, even though the ones everybody knows are Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, and you can go deeper into stuff like what SNK was doing, Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter were generally the market leaders. They were the ones innovating the genre, and it was... I wish they would have gone into the original Street Fighter's creator a little bit more, but at the same time, I understand the desire to focus on the biggest hits.
Yeah.
All right, I'm back. Sorry, I had to do tech support for my mom.
Everything okay over there?
Yeah, she got a notification from Windows about updating. She's like, "Is this real?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's real." So
I will admit I did mess with my mom a little bit. My mom has dipped her toe into the world of Echo. And
oh no,
I can't say the name. Dan and I talk about this on Dan and Chris Save the World.
Yeah.
But I changed it so that when she asked for her opera music, the response was, "The auto-destruct sequencer has been initiated. This house will self-destruct in 30 seconds." And she just stops and she stared at it for a moment, and then she looked over her shoulder at me and she said, "Fix it."
I have not pulled that one on her yet, because I like the fact that technically I don't have to pay rent. All I have to do is fix things.
Yes.
So I kind of don't want to screw with that too much. Maybe when I leave, if I ever when I leave, yes, but not right now.
Valid.
Yeah, but I will say, going back to the Alex Kidd, they did try to make Alex Kidd a thing. Alex Kidd in, I think what's called the Magic Castle is one of their first role playing games on there. It's not bad. It's Alex Kidd. It's not Zelda. So, but yeah, they had to come up with something that was going to work against Mario, and round 1 didn't work. And they couldn't really use Acrobat or Bonk because those were being used by other systems at the time. So they had to find something, and the happy accident of Sonic the Hedgehog, the little blue blur, was a boon for them, because for a very long time, like, that was a true rivalry right there. That was like the first time I think Mario ever really got challenged as a video game mascot.
Mm-hmm.
And interesting enough, the whole entire series is narrated by Charles Martinet, who is the actual voice actor for Mario.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
Luigi,
and
Wario, and Waluigi.
Yeah, he does all of them. Except
it's
Princess Peach.
It's like D. Bradley Baker in Clone Wars. He did several voices. So we could go on for a while about this show, but it's nice to know that it's basically, it may not cover everything we want it to cover, but what it does is it gets people talking about a variety of things that are important to us.
And can I say, it really made me wish I still had my original NES.
Oh yeah.
System or my Atari 2600, because those were the games I could play. And Missile Command on the Atari 2600 was fun. Whereas, like I said, Pac-Man wasn't any good. Marble Madness was almost impossible.
Well, Tanya will tell you as soon as...
I love Marble Madness.
I loved it in the arcade, but for some reason I never could play it well on
Mhm.
on Atari or Nintendo, whichever one I had.
It was
I
probably
could play-
Nintendo. I don't think
Yeah.
2600 could even handle Marble Madness.
Yeah.
No, they did not have the
Yeah, it had to be
capability.
Nintendo. You're right.
Well, Tanya will probably, I don't know if she'll lament or giggle over it, but when we were watching the Role Players episode, as soon as I started seeing familiar territory, I went from sitting back on the couch like I normally do when I'm watching something to sliding forward onto the edge of the couch and leaning forward. When I'm interested in something, apparently that's my thing. So when I'm really into something, I physically will move forward. And when Richard Garriott popped up and they started talking about Ultima and they started talking about like, cavernous, what's the Colossal Cave Adventure, which I remember playing in Zork, and it started evoking all of these memories of when I was a kid with my first, my first computers, and to circle back around to something you guys were talking about, Nintendo, Sega, and Sega, Nintendo, which was your choice? I would always say PC. And to this day, that's my response. I am terrible at console games. My thumbs do not like the controllers. And that's just and I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But give me a keyboard and mouse, and I'm going to kick everybody's ass.
And that's the night. And the thing is that was the one thing that this was focused more on console gamings, but the unsung hero throughout the whole entire time period that they cover is PC gaming. Like PC gaming never really missed a step. In the whole entire thing. It was like okay, everyone has computers, you can game.
Yeah, I remember like Lode Runner and Castle Wolfenstein and the Infocom games, Zork, Planetfall, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It all blends into, and I think what it is, these shows that we've been talking about lately are great nostalgia kicks. They remind us of what it was like to be there in that era. And I think that's a great thing for these particular shows. And we're going to cut to break in a moment. So let me just wrap up by saying, that let's not look so much at what they didn't cover, but look at what they inspired, and the feelings and the nostalgia and the things to look forward to, and let's hypothesize what are some of the things, if there is a season 2, maybe they'll do more about, the personalities of people who are behind these things. Maybe they'll go into, PC gaming a little bit more. Maybe they'll go into where it is now and where it might be going. And these are things we can talk about going forward in future podcasts. I know we've done some brainstorming ourselves in the past and have really enjoyed, the what if factor. So while as my PC in particular is starting to collapse little by little, there are certain applications that are not working. I'm starting to get reverberation and failings on a couple of like websites that I've been going to. So in lieu of that, I'm going to say let's go to break and start getting this particular podcast wrapped up, just in case this thing shuts down on me while we're still recording. So with that being said, think about the games that you played growing up, and it doesn't matter if you're 50s like we are, older, younger. If you're new to the system, new to gaming, if you're listening to it, tell us about the games that you remember defining what it was like to really kind of get into it and what you enjoyed the most. Like I know, like my son right now plays a lot of Terraria, which is a newer, I don't know how new, but it's been around for a little while. But it's one of those games in Fortnite things. What are
Terraria is about
going
as
to be
old as
talking
Minecraft.
about? Yeah, 20, 30 years from now, what are they going to be talking about in terms of Minecraft and Fortnite and Terraria and things like that? So let's brainstorm that and share that on our threads and on Facebook and whatnot, or send us a tweet, or jump on our link tree, tr.ee/Mighty Monkey, and find a way to communicate with us and let us know what you think about this particular topic. So with that being said, everybody, thank you. That was a wonderful conversation. Let's head to break. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dudes and dudettes, all points in between. James, any last licks? You said you had something you wanted to mention.
Yes, just really quick. There's not going to be a typical Gaming Street Irregulars tomorrow, since this was Krissi and I's primary research for this week. But we are going to have a short bonus episode where, if you want to know more about the history of gaming and arcade and console and PC games, we're going to have a ton of recommendations, many of them available for free on YouTube.
Fair point. Fair point. Good stuff. So, and you can catch that on also through Transistor, our usual host site, I'm assuming?
That's right.
Good deal. All right. All products available through our link tree. Okay. So, Daniel, it's now time for that legendary question of the week. I haven't done one in so long. I feel like I'm really out of practice here. Krissi.
Yes,
Pick a number between 1 and 400 and something
453.
400 and something other.
Yes.
You knew I was going there.
It's okay. 453 then.
There we go.
What is a controversial opinion you have? Oh, this could be dangerous.
New question. New question.
That's a podcast. That is a podcast in and of itself.
New question. New question.
I have to go.
And I need to be miles away from it.
Oh, man.
What's that, Billy?
No, I wrote a whole blog about that a few weeks ago. I was going to get my list of 10 out.
Yeah. New question.
How about
New question.
How about 452? If you had an imaginary friend, what would his or her name be?
All right. Krissi, if you had an imaginary friend, what would their name be?
Kumquat.
Kumquat?
Kumquat.
Okay.
Because that's just fun to say.
Yes, it is.
Kumquat, we must now take over the castle.
It's my favorite word that sounds dirty that isn't.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Right? Hey, like Daniel, if you had an imaginary friend, what would their name be?
I have no idea.
That's a good name. Yeah, that works.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Oh.
Imaginary friend.
James, you got 2 cents on this one?
I've got dozens of them. Most of them are my D&D characters.
He doesn't have split personalities. He's a gamer.
That's about right.
I would think Robespierre, just because it's such an odd name, and it would be like, "Come, Robespierre, we're saving the king." So
I was going to go D'Artagnan, but
D'Artagnan. There you go. See, same
idea. Oh, that is a very difficult, challenging question. I think if you asked like a 5-year-old what's your imaginary friend's name, they're gonna start rattling them off. You ask adults.
Did you have an imaginary friend when you were a kid?
I did not. My friends were books and Barbies.
That makes sense. That works. So. At one point, I had several Lego minifigures, and I think they all had names at one point or another.
See, I was never good at names. I was never good at naming things. I was never one of the.
I've always had a knack for
that. I was
in story writing and things like that.
In story writing, that was always my biggest struggle. What are the names of my characters? I can come up with who they are, but I can't come up with what their names were.
Yeah, the name generator for all my D&D type characters, I usually pull from like books or whatever. But yeah,
or she asks me.
It's a challenge. Yeah, I'm like, hey, I need a name, and he starts throwing out like 20 gazillions. I'm like, I like this one, but not that part. I like that part, but not this part. Oh, wait, that one might be a winner.
Well, I've got the Christopher names too, so it's.
I have a knack for it. It's one of those things. I'm good at that sort of thing. I don't know why, but I do. All right. Well, that's a fair enough conversation. So that sounds like a wrap then. At this point, we'll move on. And hey Dan.
Chris.
Hey Dan.
Hey Chris.
Hit it. Because this is FC3's Monkey Business, your one-stop shop for everything geeky. And as always, everything can be geeky if you love it enough. A product of the Mighty Monkey Corporation, purveyors and producers of the Flower City Comic Con, coming at you September 25th and 26th of 2021 at the Total Sports Experience in Gates. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow us wherever we go, and we will lead you to where the entertainment is. You guys have a great week. Have a safe week. We will talk to you again next week.
Game over.
Nice.
Woo!
That was good.